Hi, and welcome to the Living in a Prius YouTube channel. I wanted to do a quick how-to video on managing food if you are getting into car camping or wanting to learn how to live in your car. If you're a subscriber to this channel, then you know that over the last 5 years, I've been focused on adapting a more minimalist lifestyle. It started when I became an empty nester after my two kids moved out and I decided to move out of my 2,400 square foot house. I ended up moving into a 500 square foot apartment, but I had a really hard time getting rid of the 30 years of items that I had accumulated. So I ended up buying a really big storage unit and keeping all of my stuff for about a year until I finally was able to decide to let it all go. And I gave away everything. And it felt really good. There's something empowering about getting rid of clutter and physical items and living a more simple life. So I ended up taking it to the next level, and after watching a bunch of videos of people who lived in their cars, I decided to move into my Prius. Now, I also did that because I wanted to move to Silicon Valley to become an artificial intelligence expert. You can learn more about that in some of the other videos on this channel. But for now, what I want to talk about is how I learned to manage food when living in a car. Because food management is something you take for granted when you live in an apartment or a house. You have a refrigerator, a stove, a microwave, cabinets, everything you need to store and prepare food. But when you live in a car, you don't have all those things. Although, one of the first things that I did when I moved into my car is I tried to replicate the lifestyle that I previously had. So here was my first attempt at food storage in my car, where I basically created a pantry in the back of my car where I had almost everything. I also bought an Instant Pot, had a microwave, I even had a hot plate, and I bought a really big refrigerator cooler. So what I was trying to do was replicate my life living in a house and an apartment when living in my car. And that just didn't work. So what I ended up doing was giving away everything except the cooler. The refrigerated cooler was a really good investment. In fact, I spent more than I originally wanted to, but I also wanted a really big one that could store a lot of items. And so here you can see I purchased my original cooler for $250. And I can say that this is a good investment if you're living in your car and you eat a lot of items that need to be refrigerated. It's also a good investment if you travel a lot. So when I travel for work, there's a lot of times I'll end up staying in a hotel, and this is really convenient because I can just take my refrigerated cooler out of my car, wheel it into the room, and plug it into an outlet. And now I've brought with me all of my food. And so this could be really valuable if you do travel a lot for work, or if you're doing urban car camping, or even traditional car camping where you want to have refrigerated items out at a campsite. One of the problems that I had was the cooler was obviously big, which is good for food storage, but it's not good in terms of living in a small space when you live in a car. Here you can see it's really big. It takes up a big chunk of space in my car. It was tall, so it was hard to open the lid and actually reach in to see the items inside. So one kind of life hack that I figured out was I first changed my layout by putting up half of the back seat, which gave me a lowered platform for the refrigerator. So here you can see it sitting down lower, which made it much easier to get into it. I also want to mention that if you have a refrigerator and you're living in your car or car camping, you'll want to get some type of a power station that you can plug that refrigerated cooler into, because you're not going to want to keep it plugged into your car when your car's not running, or it'll drain your battery. So what you want to have is some type of power station that will charge up while you're driving around, or that you can pre-charge in your house or apartment and then plug your cooler into it, so when your car's not running, it still has power to keep your food cold. So this big cooler was valuable because it could store a lot of items. Now, one thing that I would recommend if you get a big cooler like this is to create a container system. So I measured the interior of this cooler cooler and then went online and found these little plastic containers. And the reason I got that is because it was so deep. But if by getting little plastic containers that you can stack, I was able to put a lot more food items in here. This is the second container stacked on top of the first one I just showed you. And so as you can see, in the first one, I've got a bunch of different items, veggie patties, I'm a vegetarian, rice, and some other food. Then on the second layer, I've got soy milk or a full-size milk carton, more food items, a half a loaf of bread, and in the side compartment here, I've got two big bottles of bottled water. So it takes up a lot of space in a vehicle, but you can store a lot in one of these big refrigerated coolers. Now, I ultimately decided to downsize because one of the things that I learned was how to transition away from my mindset previously of wanting to have as much food as I can stored and available all the time, and realizing that I live in a car, so it's easy to go to the grocery store and grab something real quick, and it's much more efficient to store less food on hand. So I bought a different cooler, which was smaller, used much less electricity so that it didn't drain the power station as quickly and took up less space. So this is the second cooler that I bought that I'd recommend that has been really good. And as you can see, it was a lot less, 180 compared to the 250 that I paid for the original cooler. And you can see the size difference here. I mean, it's almost half the size. It's a little bit bigger than half the size, but it takes up a lot less space. And so then what I decided to do is figure out how I could modify my car to place this in a better spot. And what I decided to do was modify my front seat so I could push it all the way forward and then actually use this cooler as a way to extend my sleeping platform and make it almost a foot and a half longer. So if you live in a Prius and have one like mine, this is a good hack to not only free up space for where your cooler usually sits, but also to use it to extend your bedding platform to give you more room to sleep. Now, I will tell you, to use this approach, I had to modify my front seat, so this is not an approach for everybody. In fact, I had to actually take my front seat apart and then use a bunch of tools to basically break these sliders underneath the seat because they've got stops on them so that the seat won't go too forward. But I wanted my seat to go all the way forward as far as it could. So this may impact your resale value if you take the approach I did, although my Prius has over 200,000 miles. It's had major damage. If you're a subscriber, you know I hit a deer and had to do body work on my own car. So there's not much value left in this car. For me, the value is it being as comfortable and accommodating as my living space as it possibly can be. So I modified this seat to go all the way forward, and then that created a space here again to extend the bedding platform. Also made it really easy for me to reach over from the driver's side and grab stuff out of it when I'm sitting in the front seat. The thing you can do if you don't want to mess up your passenger seat by altering it the way I did is this cooler does just sit comfortably in the front seat. So this is another way to free up space in the back and have your cooler more accessible when you're driving. Although I would recommend if you take this approach that you have tinted windows and the blackout panels like I have. So when you park, you can put those up and hide the fact you've got this cooler in the front seat. Because if somebody's walking around a parking lot looking to break into vehicles and they see a cooler sitting in the front seat, it's basically going to be an invitation to them to break into your car because they're going to think, oh, this person's got a lot of items in this car that may be valuable. So this is a car that I want to break into. So just always be careful if you're living or urban car camping in your car. Be careful about putting stuff in the front seat that's visible that could invite someone wanting to break into your car. So when I bought the smaller refrigerated cooler, the other thing that I did is I bought just a traditional unrefrigerated cooler and split my food into more of a two-tier system where I've got a refrigerated cooler and an unrefrigerated cooler, so I store two different types of food. I showed you that food pantry system I had when I first moved into my car. I didn't use that very long. Number one, I found out that if you're going to store any type of food, it needs to be in a sealed container. So your food's fine if it's in a refrigerator cooler because that lid closes tight and keeps everything contained inside. Anything else that's not a refrigerated item, you also want to put in a container that seals tight because otherwise as I've seen in other car camping and car living videos, you're going to get ants and mice and other things in your car. They're going to smell that food and be attracted to crawl into your car through the little cracks and vents and things that they can find a way in. So I bought this second cooler at Walmart and it was only $22. So it was a really good investment because it holds a lot of food. It doesn't look like it from the top here, but if I unpack it, you can see all of this stuff fit into that cooler. So what I can do is keep my refrigerated things in my cooler and minimize how much refrigeration space. Like I showed you before, I had this rice and some drinks and other things in the cooler before, the refrigerated cooler. So I was using a lot more energy to refrigerate things that didn't need to be refrigerated. And I offloaded those into this unrefrigerated cooler that doesn't use up any energy as a secondary storage space for food items that really don't need to be refrigerated. The other nice thing about the system, if you travel a lot, is it's great for, again, staying in hotels. Here's a hotel I stayed at a little while back when I was traveling for Amenity Suite, the apartment brand that I started. And this is perfect because it had a little countertop and kitchen area in the hotel. And you can see the cooler, the refrigerated cooler, and the other cooler fit perfectly on that countertop. So everywhere I go, I take all the food I have with me. Saves me money. I don't have to eat out when I'm traveling, and I've always got the menu of food I'm used to and I want with me everywhere I go. So again, this can be a valuable approach even if you're not living in your car, but just travel a lot. So again, I wanted to just do a real quick how-to video on how to manage food if you're car camping, travel a lot, or living in your car. I hope this video was helpful. Please subscribe to this channel. We'd love to have you as a member of this community. And if you have any questions or any requests for videos that I can do that would be helpful to you, then please leave your questions, comments, or requests in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.